Live. Okay. Harka fuunee akkam jirtu daawwattoota keenyaa fi hordoftoota keenya. Maqaan kiyya Biftu Adema, ani tola ooltuu Ollaa damee barnootaati. Guyyaadhaa sagantaa marii gaafiif deebii qabannee dhufnee isinii jira. Hanga dhumaa kan wajjin turtan kabajaan isin affeera. Keessummoonni keenya kan guyyaa irraa daree Afaan Oromoo Ollaa irraa kan dhufan Firatol, Saamu'eelii fi Emily Barton baga nagaan dhuftan isiniin jedha. Osoo gara sagantaa keenyaan deeminiin dura garuu jara lamaanii carraa kennaa akka isaan hordoftoota keenyaaf daawwattoota keenyaaf beeksisan Firatol irraa jalqaba. So you can take a moment to introduce yourself.
All right. Maqaan kiyya Firatol jedhama. Firatol Saamu'eel. Magaalaa Calgary keessa jiraadha. Ofii Birmingham UK keessa sin jiraadha. Barattuu seeraati waggaa lammaffaa keessa jira. Kanaaf wanta baay'ee jaaladhu. Afaan Oromoo illee abbaa kiyya wajjin, Emily wajjin baranna Ollaa irratti. Kanaaf Ollaa wajjin isin dalagaa akka legal researcher. I don't know how they say that in Afaan Oromoo. We're getting there. But dhimma Oromoo kanarratti gargaaruu fi haala jiruuf jireenya akka seeraa wajjin siyaasaa, wantuma kanneen hojii wal qabatee irratti dalaguu yaala barattuudha. Galatooma isiniin jedharee sagantaa keessan irratti nu affeeru.
Tole Firatol galatoomii ammas baga nagaan dhufte isin jedha. Emily, this is an opportunity for you to go ahead and introduce yourself and how you tell us a little bit about how you came to the Afaan Oromoo classes as well.
Me, Emily Jedama, and I lived in Ethiopia for 3 years in Ilubabor, near Dupa Woreda or near Metu. I was a Peace Corps volunteer, so Tola Oltuma Peace Corps Ture. And my language I learned from my training. So I had 3-month training in Afaan Oromoo. And when I came back to America, I was looking to continue my language learning. Because my husband is Ethiopian and I want to teach our little boy here Afaan Oromoo as well, and to speak with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Amma hoji koti Afaan Ingilifa or barsistu Afaan Ingilifa online, and I teach with VIP Kid, but later I am going to teach adult English online and maybe work at a daycare. But my plan is to get my master's in elementary English, and I'm hoping to study or teach abroad again. And I'm hoping maybe back in Ethiopia.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Emily, and welcome once again. So the first couple of questions that I have are going to be for the both of you. And then I will ask each one of you some questions that pertain to your individual experiences. And so the first question is, why do you guys think it's important to learn Afaan Oromoo? And tell us a little bit, I know Emily you did, but anything that you didn't, tell us a little bit about your background story when it comes to Afaan Oromoo. I'm going to start with Firatol. So tell us why you think it's important to learn Afaan Oromoo.
Well, for starters, I'm Oromo, and my father always says language is the boat that carries culture. And I don't think that's far from the truth, because in my experiences, and this is not just for Afaan Oromoo, I'm just going to narrow down to that. When you speak a language, when you speak the colloquials and, the grammar and the vocabulary, you have a way of reaching into the souls of a community. I had a particular experience. I went on a hike and I was learning German. I'm still not very good, but it was in the early stages, and I saw this group, and they were very standoffish at first. German people are not exactly hurrah. So they were just hanging about. We were walking up this up to this cliff, and then we were passing, and as Canadians, well, yeah, every time we see each other, we're like, hello, Mali, so we saw each other, and I heard their language because they were being very standoffish, and I was just like, oh, let me say hello. And then I heard their language, and they were speaking German, and she was telling her, oh, let us pass, let them pass, and then we'll go after. And then I was like, guten Tag, and it was just amazing, the kind of response that I got from them. And I was just like, wow. So it's not just with my people then, language has a way of getting into any community, any society, and it has a way of allowing you to connect on a deeper level. As an Oromo person living abroad, I think it's very, very useful to speak Afaan Oromo, not for the basics of just speaking with your family and your friends back home, but as Emily's experience, she worked in multiple, living abroad, and the Oromo language is spoken by over 1 million people, 100 million people, not 1 million people, 100 million people. It's spoken in over like 3 to 4 countries, and of course within the diaspora. And I believe that if you're a person that really takes the initiative to work and help people within these regions, it's really important that you speak the language. And last but not least, why not? If we take the time to learn German and French and Spanish, why wouldn't you find the use in learning Afaan Oromo? So yeah.
Thank you, Firatol. Emily, this is an opportunity for you to respond to that question.
Well, she hit all the things that I agree with. But so my background is my mother is Panamanian, so she's not American, and my father is American, and I kind of grew up more Hispanic. And Afaan Oromo is the language. Some of the words are very similar to Spanish, so I do find myself mixing them up a lot when I'm trying to speak Spanish or Oromo. And it helped me catch the language really quick. And just like Firatol said, it does connect you to people a lot more. I feel like the more you know the language, you also have access to the way people express themselves in that language, the way it connects with the social aspect and the cultural aspect. Like when I learned Afaan Oromo and I saw how everyone lived their life, it connected. It was just like everything's simple. In my mind and in English, you have all these words for like beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful, but in Oromo, you can just say one word, like, oh, bareda, baredu, kana baredu, kuno baredu. Like, you don't have to think so much about like how to describe something because everyone already knows what you're trying to say with one simple word. And I also was very encouraged by my community in Darimu, because they were just like, Korme Eva or Korme Emily, good job. Or they were just so happy for me to learn it and to know that Afaan Oromo, a lot of people don't know about it in America. So coming here, I'm educating other people, and I'm also educating people about Ethiopia itself and the culture, because a lot of people don't know much about it, and they are curious, and I just love offering that. And I feel like I developed as a person living abroad and just really focused on trying to communicate, and it did help me helped me connect with my students. I showed them in the classroom that I'm also learning their language and it was okay to make mistakes, and they would help me try to form a sentence, and I would help them. And I made that bridge of connection. Just because I'm a foreigner, it doesn't mean I don't want to know you. I want to know you. I want to learn from you. I want to grow from you, and I want to become a part of that community. So in my third year, I miss it so much, but it's like my family. It's my other family. And because I met my husband there and now we have a child that I named Nuloli for a reason, because there's a lot going on in Oromia when I was there. And I felt like this is our child. And one day I want him to know where he comes from. He's Oromo, he's American, he's Panamanian, and he needs to know how to connect with so many people so that he could help his own countries in the future.
Thank you. It was a very beautiful response, Emily. I loved both of your responses, actually. And so I'm going to move on to my second question for you guys. You guys are in the Ollaa adult Afaan Oromoo classes, and you're in the level 2 class. So what have you guys learned so far in that class? Firatol?
Okay, I was hoping to, just pass this on to Emily because she's like the star student in class, always asking questions. It's true. We have, honestly, it's always great to start from the basics. And our teacher, he started from literally Aba, Ada, and then we went into Veda Chap, with Chief 2, and essentially vowels and consonants, and like how the structures. Oh, firstly, we started with the history of Afaan Oromoo, actually, which is quite neat. We learned about key figures such as Onismos Nasib, Ashu Aga, who worked with Bilile in writing fables and poems. Oh, Bilile was also the beauty that ended up, I think, being married to the German prince who fell in love. And then we learnt about how Nismos Nasib translated the Bible into Afaan Oromoo, and Aster Ganno, about these people are essentially the founders of Afaan Oromoo in writing. Oromo culture is very oral, so there's a lot of brain work here. They remember everything, but and it's intergenerational knowledge that's passed on. So I think it really helped to kind of put things in perspective and show the relevance of language when that was presented. And then along the way, we're learning, the grammar, and we're doing seasons and days and months of the year. And Emily killed it in class, I call her Hata Nuloli because I just think that's so epic. So Hati Nuloli classic goti, and also the teacher plays music for us in class, and sometimes he enjoys the music a little too much, but it really, I think, it's things from the past that he relates with, and it's his way of also kind of, because music is so important when it comes to language. It helps you learn accents, dialects, and eventually you learn the meanings. So it helps people really integrate in the culture. So we're progressing. That's kind of what we've been up to.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. Emily, what do you have to share about what you've been learning in the Afaan Oromoo adult class?
So for me, I've been learning how to piece together sentences more fluidly, and how to do it grammatically correct. I mean, I'm learning the pieces right now, but I'm hoping that later I can start putting them together and making more in-depth conversation. So a lot of it is kind of review for me. Like, I know the months, I know the days, but it's also interesting to know the other forms and other dialects of the same word, because I was in the Metu area, so we said bupa, and then some people say hankaku. So it's like there's two different words for eggs. Which one should I use? But and I also agree with the music. That's how I learned a lot, and going in the buses and the bajajes and all that, like when the music's on, I'm singing in Oromo, you know, Malawaya, Malawaya. And then I also learned, I asked my you know, like my friends, what does Malawaya mean? And then I learned the phrase. So it like, it's nice to have people in a smaller group where I can like talk to the teacher, and also just to see that it's not just me who wants to learn. I have a community and they're family now, Atinkoti.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and then my next question is, when did you start learning Afaan Oromo and how did you start? So, yoom Afaan Oromoo barachuu eegaltanii akkasumas immoo akkamitti eegaltan kan jedhu Firatol irraa jalqaba.
Um, Afaan Oromoo hanga gara waggaa jahaa ture Afaan Oromoo sirriitti hin dubbanne. Ani Finfinnee dhaladhee achitti ijoollee you know, gara adda addaa wajjin guddadhee. Obviously Finfinnee lafa tuulamaati, and you know, we lived in the Lagadati area, cool people. So, but obviously because of the imposition of the government, Afaan Oromoo is not very well taken. And I mean, Martin kenna Afaan Oromoo haasaya. Ufi Afaan kiyya yeroo hiiku, I said the first word was waha. And my father was furious. He's like, how dare she speak in the enemy's language when I have been talking to her in Afaan Oromoo? So he got mad. He wouldn't talk to me for like 3 days. Mind you, I was younger than Nunali. So I was a kid. And then so I could understand, but I spoke Amharic because that's what was around me. And then, but my family, we are originally from Arsi Kofale. And we moved to Shashmane and Kofale. And in a matter of like 5 months, I learned everything from insults and all the bad words and all the, you know, jokes. So I was that Disava kid for a while. And then later on, I was like, yeah, the Kofale kid, you know? And so after when I was like 7-ish, 8-ish, I moved abroad. So I kind of bettered it as I lived in Nairobi and I lived when I moved to Canada. So yeah, akkasitti baradhe.
Okay, tole galatoom Firatol. Emily, atoo akkamitti Afaan Oromoo baratte?
Waga 2015 to 2018. I learned Afaan Oromoo with Peace Corps. So the first couple months I had Giota Sadi Lenji Afaan Oromoo Kabature with a teacher, and the first part was he spoke English, he taught us the simple phrases, and then the second part she spoke only in Oromo. And I was like, oh my god, I don't know it. It was so scary, but we also lived with an Ethiopian family. So in Holeta, I lived with a family for 3 months, and they also became my family. They taught me how to make buna, how to speak Oromo, how to like communicate better, and even just the cultural greetings and how to interact with people. Then after that, I went to my site, Darimu, and that's a long bus ride from Addis to Metu. And I moved into my little home. So I had a Mana Duke, Baya Jalada. And everyone in my community helped me. And I also had a teacher, Barsisa Asefa, who helped tutor me a little bit. And then I also picked up from just like my community and my students. I also would go to the library and I would get the books and I would like teach myself words and try them out to see how people would respond or if I said them right. So I guess so far I learned for 3 years, and then now I'm trying to continue learning it. and I feel like I need to continue working on it because all I know how to do is greet.
That's a
So
start. That's okay.
I know.
That's a start.
So talking to my mother-in-law and stuff, they're like, Eva, fayada, nagada, nagada, matinke, fayada, nagada, hojike, nagada, nagada, fayada. Like, and then it's like silence, you know, I'm like,
Oh, oh,
but
it's okay.
it's a learning, process.
Yes, it's a learning process. That's right. You're doing great. Firatol, the next question that I have is specifically for you. What is your connection status of the diaspora-born children? What is the connection status of the diaspora-born children with their families back home? How challenging is that for you, if it's challenging?
That is a very, very good question. See, as a person, I am very friendly. Even like my friends make fun of me and they're like, Farah's the kind of person that will give a homeless person a hug. And it's true, you know. And I think my character has really helped with when it comes to bonding with people back home. And when we moved from Finfinne to Kofale, I I met all my relatives, and we had our family that we made in Finfinne with in Nagadadi, our adopted family, who people who to this very day we speak with, and then we have our blood relatives in RC, and I love family so much. My name means Firatol, literally, be good to
Yeah,
your relatives and friends.
yeah.
So I I push as best as I can, but I find that for us diaspora kids, it's really hard for us to sort of feel comfortable enough because both sides have preconceived notions about how the other is to act.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, we can be a little bit presumptuous as diaspora kids. We feel like, oh, they wouldn't understand us. They're not they don't jam to our things, and just it's a way for us to protect ourselves. Honestly, it's not us being inherently rude. And then the same goes to Oromo people back home. When I went back in 2018, it was my first time in like 13 years, and some of my relatives, thought that, oh, she's going to be too stuck up, she's the youngest, mali mali, so that she's spoiled. It's true, I was spoiled from when I was a young age, and I'm grateful for the love my family gave me, but it made them apprehensive of me. And that's when I realized there's a disconnect. And if there was no Oromo, if I couldn't speak Afaan Oromo, I'm quite sure my connection with them would have been very, very limited. Because when you don't speak the language, sometimes you don't put the effort of reaching out to these people and saying, I'm you, really. I'm here because I want to be with you. I want to remember the cherished relations that we have and revive that. And so I think language really fixes it. Suppas, dildilasa wali qaba. Ummata biyya jiru kaasi wanta baay'ee ka wal fakkaatu qabna. We are so similar, especially with technology nowadays. People are just there's nobody's above anybody. It's just a matter of resource. So it's a bit difficult, and it requires a lot of humility from our side as kids from the diaspora. It's true, we can be stuck up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, so guys, let's settle down. But at the same time, I know it is us being protective because people back home are a lot more honest. They don't shelter things as we Westerners have learned to kind of be with. Kanaafuu rakkoo guddaa jira, and aadaa kennaa, sirna seeraaf heera kennaa, jiruuf jireenya, loqoda tokko hubachuu jechuun waan guddaadha. If I moved to, like Emily knows so many different words that I may not understand because she was in Ilu and I was in RC, and these are things that we need to retain. These are cultures that cannot die. And as kids in the diaspora, namni baay'ee ba'u jira. Kids like Nuloli, if we're not examples, how is he going to grow up, you know? And so I believe that language is one of the best ways that we can connect these two realms.
Thank you, Firatol. I appreciate your response. My next question is specifically for Emily. What did you learn when you were in Oromia? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with the Oromo community? I know that you mentioned that you felt very welcomed and they were very friendly and they were helping you with your Afaan Oromo. Is there anything else that you would like to add to
So moving to a new whole place, I was very afraid. But my landlord and her son and daughter, like, they became another family. She would always invite me over and make sure that I'm welcome. Like, go to Eva. My name was Eva in Ethiopia because I didn't want to be called Emily. It was easier. I know it's kind of weird. So they would always be like, go to Eva, Bunadugi. Or she would always like have some, lunch or something that I could eat. And it was funny because I really didn't like Shiro that much, but she was like, she's like, but she knew I would eat Shiro with Ibe. So she would go and like, I have Ibe. And she had cows and it was just so nice, like, to just grab a mango or a lomi and just have it right there, and my whole community, it was just a whole new experience. I had all these people who didn't know me, but they welcomed me. They greeted me every time I stepped out my house. It was like, Barsistu, Barsistu, Akami. And I'm just like, hi. And I just learned, that to just embrace everything. Like, either I'm going to be that American that sits and doesn't enjoy anything, or I'm going to be that American that shows that this is what American people can be. They are mixed and they are loving and they like want to embrace, other cultures. So, and it was also one of my dreams to live abroad. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I have been to Ethiopia before in college for field school, but I went to the Afar region. And that was for a month. So that was my first connection. And I felt like it was God sent. I was like, I signed up for Peace Corps. I didn't know what country I would get. I put Ethiopia, and then I got Ethiopia. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is meant to be. So learning, just being able to live there, learning about, oh, it's raining. You better get your jerrycan out and get your water. Or, okay, it's sunny. It's like dry season. You're not going to get water. So you better like save that water. Or even learning how to use the kasala and cook my food. And, oh, ipsabade. What am I going to, I don't know, And it was just such a great experience, and having my little best friends, like, oh my God, Edis and Salia, they were only like 3 years old. The other one's like 2 years old, coming to my house and like just playing with me or helping me cook or telling me, like, they were teaching me how to do things, There are a lot of funny moments, and just like I learned to adapt real quick. My students learn to just talk to me and be free, because they would be free, or be aparte. And then everyone would always tell me, like, oh, you look like you got fat, you got fat, this country is good for you. And I'm like, yeah. Sure. And it was just, I learned a lot of love, and family became really important to me, and like reaching out to people. I did have a couple things where it was more complicated just being a female teacher, and I didn't have my master's or bachelor's in English. So I had some trouble with some male, teachers who they didn't think I qualified, or, they found something, but I always found my way around it, and I learned about Ethiopian time. Like, don't try to schedule a meeting because no one's gonna show up for you. and and if you want to like collaborate or work with somebody, you got to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to your house. How about that? Like,
Mhm.
like I'm gonna invite you for dinner, or I'm gonna invite you for lunch or breakfast. That's like the best time you can talk to people. Having that social aspect, and learning to like, when will the bus come so that I can go back home, and running after the bus and falling on my butt in front of everyone, like, come back. It was fun.
Good, good. So you had a very rich experience in Oromia. You absolutely loved it, evidently. Good. My next question is for Firatol. I recall you saying that your father, when you said woha, when he asked what water was pretty upset. So I'm assuming that Afaan Oromo was heavily enforced in your household. So can you tell us a little bit of what that looked like, learning Afaan Oromo culture, Afaan Oromo history? Um, learning Afaan Oromo and Oromo culture and history. Tell us a little bit of what that looked like at home for you.
Pardon me. To be honest, it was an adventure. I can say that. Um, my mom and dad would teach me. They would tell me Oduduri. I loved story time, and my mom's like a very illustrious storyteller, and she just tell me things about about the, like, even the turtle and the hare, and the story about the wife that killed her husband. That's probably not an appropriate to tell a child, but she said it in a very PG funny way, so it worked. um she would tell me about the child whose mum passed away, so she would tell him to go beg under a tree, and she would get him food. So these all obviously sound very grim, but they sound a lot better in Afaan Oromo, trust me. But most importantly, it was also games. Um, I don't know if you guys know Harre Gurra Berbecha, and it's actually part of how I developed my accent and I developed my vocabulary, like parts of the body. They'd say Harre Gurra Berbecha, and you say Berbecha, Malishi, 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 and then they would make you go on for like, I don't know, a good 5 minutes. You would, no, maybe not that long, but like a good minute, and then they just track you like Malnat, and you have to say something like Dhamma, because if you say Mila, that's like you're eating the feet of a donkey. um, but learning Afaan Oromo, my dad was a teacher back home, and so every chance was an opportunity to learn with him. He would give me a background story and tell me some history behind it. And I was very close with my dad growing up, especially when we lived in Nagadati. Um, and he would take me to class with him, and I'd get to sit in between his students, and then we'd walk home, and we'd make a stop on the way. We'd see birds, and he'd tell me that's a handari, tuninara, like. So it was adventurous, and eventually, when I moved here to Canada, I had an uncle. Well, I have an uncle, still alive, and I very much love him. He actually lives in Hamilton, so he would talk to me like an adult. He's the one where I learned to speak, the RC accent, the Jarsuma talk, and they would, the way they just soup our words, and it just flowed together. And so from him too, I learned in the most like educational and deep wisdom based kind of experience. So I'm very grateful for that. It was enforced to this very day. My mom mixes Amharic words sometimes, and then I mix English words all the time. That's my big issue. So my dad's like Sunmali, what is a table? And and then I'd be like, oh, or what is a tes, or what is a chen? I'd be like, hope you're all right. But yeah, that was my experience learning Afaan Oromo. So very fun.
It sounds like quite a privilege. I don't think you guys can see me, but you can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like a very unique experience. I don't think that a lot of diaspora youth have the same privilege, or even people back home, they don't have the same privilege when it comes to learning Afaan Oromo. I can relate to that. I said something to my dad last night. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, irati nyatara." He's like, "Malin irati." I was like, "Oh, irati nyatara," you know. So I hear you, Firatol. And then my next question is for Emily. Would you recommend the Afaan Oromo classes for non-Oromo people?
Yes. So I recommend anyone to learn a language, period, but also to learn the languages that should be known and that aren't popular. Like everyone knows Spanish, or French, but what about the languages that no one else knows that a large population of people speak? Like it's better to dip your toes in all the diversity that you possibly can so that like change or like just people that are different from you aren't as scary because that's I think is the problem nowadays. People are they're too into their one little room that they don't realize that because of the richness and the beauty of this world that there's so much more to see and that more rooms are colorful and not just your plain white room. There's purple and blue and pink, and when you don't, I feel like it's important to learn a language because it does help you connect to other people, and it opens doors, and it also, you never know who you're going to meet that is Oromo, and then you say one word that they probably wouldn't even think that you knew, and how that makes you guys become like BFFs. You're like, oh my god, like let's have lunch, it makes friendship.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree with you. All right. And then for Firatol, what would you advise our diaspora? Why would you advise our diaspora to learn Afaan Oromo or join the class? So Emily has spoken to the non-Oromo population. I want you to speak to the Oromo population.
Oh, there's so much to say, but I think it's very important to ask oneself about the responsibility of the Oromo child. Um, Nobody can replace you. No one can. You are born Oromo, your parents try to raise you as Oromo, and you as a person, well, you may live abroad, but your people as a people live in a country where they're not exactly allowed to be Oromo. Saying I'm Oromo is a political statement that can cause you trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you must ask yourself, by not choosing to learn this language, how you're costing the history of the Oromo people, the development, the continuity, and ultimately the existence of your culture altogether. And once you ask yourself that question and you realize that you'll be without as opposed to, being better off, I think every person can come up with a response that really connects to their heart and also make them see clearly about their relations to their people. Um, for me, if it wasn't for my family, to be honest, I'm very, very grateful. I, being born in Finfinne, if I lived in Finfinne longer, I would probably be a big time Ethiopian, sympathizer. And that's kind of not to say that, I don't like Ethiopia. I'm an Oromo and I've seen the pain that my people go through. So sometimes even saying I'm Ethiopian is like gritting my teeth, because and personally, it's also family. My family suffered a lot because of this Oromo issue. My mom had to abandon all her wealth, her property. Not that that's what's important, but she was sort of the glue that kept her family, her clan together. And her leaving bore a lot of consequences for her family. My father was always being chased by bullets, you know. Just his whole life he lived as an IDP, and then an internally displaced person. He could not be in one place for a long time. That's why we were in Finfin Lagadadi, because nobody knows you there. And so kind of living in the diaspora and living as a refugee in Nairobi, and then seeing what back home meant for us as a youth in the diaspora, especially, pardon me, as a person of color, as a person who, when you come here, you're just black. There's nothing to you about it. That's a hard pill to swallow, because in East Africa, color is relative. We have Oromos that are as fair as Emily and, as dark as, dark chocolate. That's just how we go. Color does not mean anything with us. But here, it's everything. And I realized that I live in a society, and this is really important, guys. It doesn't matter whether you're in Europe, whether you're in the Middle East, whether you're in Australia and New Zealand, especially in America. My God, North America. They have a specific way of how you must act, how you must speak, how you must display and prepare and present yourself, and what kind of music you like, or how long your hair is, or the texture of your hair. All of these things are preconceived notions that are implicated upon you. And again, you can see I'm very much protesting to this, because I was very new to it. There was nothing that I could have expected. And I realized that was what was expected of me. I wasn't allowed to be Oromo anymore. I was just, what this outside society had conceived for itself. And so I was supposed to be viewed according to that. And that didn't settle well with me, obviously. And so learning Afaan Oromo, guys, is so important for us, because it adds that layer of identity. And in this world, in this northern society, in the global north, if you do not have a character that you stand by, if you do not have an identity that you stand by, one will be placed upon you. And that's where you must question your autonomy, and eventually leads back home. And it's like, and I don't want people that don't speak Afaan Oromo proper to feel rubbish about this. Like, just saying I'm Oromo is enough. That's the first step. Be conscious of that, and ask yourself, how can I connect further, and what will history expect of me, and what the cost will be if I don't take upon this responsibility. Because at the end of the day, it is the responsibility, pardon me, honestly, it's the responsibility of the Oromo child to take that torch. And so that is why I think it's really, really important and very significant in our development as a society to speak our language. Thank you.
Thank you, Firatol. That was very beautiful and eloquently described. And that's all the questions that I have for you guys. Do you guys have anything else that you would like to add for our viewers? Any last messages? Any tips, advice, anything that you would like to say?
Emily, come on. Ada nuloli.
I guess just thank you for, just giving me this opportunity to share a little bit of my experience in Oromia. I'm not even like Oromo. I didn't grow up in Ethiopia, but I feel like I'm Oromo from being there. And like, I can't even speak right now, but like, I thank my community for taking care of me and for teaching me so much. And I feel like I will always be, I would always be a child of Darimu. That's what they called me before. Mucha Darimuda, Mucha Darimuda. Like, you're a part of us now. And so I just bye galetoma.
Well, thank you, Emily. We appreciate you as well. Firatol, is there anything that you would like to add?
Obviously, I'd like to say thank you to Ollaa and you, Biftu, and Yossi, who's hiding behind the background, for helping us setting this up. And I would like to extend, obviously, my thanks to Emily. It's really important to have your input in this, and you honestly, you don't realize the significance of what you're doing for your child or yourself and for our community. So I appreciate that. And most importantly, I want to say thank you to our youth all over the world. If anybody is watching, I'm sure there are many. Uh, this past year since Atalu's death, I have seen a whole new revival of Oromuma in the youth. And thanks to social media, it's everywhere. And I just feel like that just it hits, to the core. And I have hope, honestly, till they learn the language. And even without, our kids are awoken. And I really want to say thank you for those that took the mantle, because that's the first thing. You understood the relevance of it. And I want to pass my thanks to all the children, from the little kids to the guerros and carres, and their pride and their various ways of advocacy for music, protests, dance. That's really important. I want everybody to keep that up in every capacity that we can.
Well, thank you once again, ladies, and this concludes our discussion for today. Thank you so much, Firatol and Emily. It was such a beautiful conversation. I feel inspired myself, and I hope to see you guys all at the next discussion. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Biftu.
Kayata.
I had an ulali.
Ciao.